It's late afternoon in autumn. The air has that quiet chill, the sky a flat, thoughtful gray, and your yard is covered in dry leaves, layered like a soft, imperfect carpet. You hold the leaf blower, press the trigger, and the noise slices through the stillness. Leaves scatter, order returns. Everything looks right. But underneath, something hesitates. A small insect freezes. Fungal threads stop mid-growth. Moisture begins to vanish. A system that has been running, quietly, efficiently, for thousands of years gets interrupted in a moment you barely notice. It feels like cleaning. It feels responsible. Everyone does it. But the science tells a different story. What you're clearing away isn't just debris. It's a living process your yard depends on. This is backyard biology. If that moment made you pause, even briefly, consider leaving a like, because this might quietly change how you see your yard from now on. Subscribe if you're curious about what's actually alive out there and why it matters more than it seems at first glance. And tell me, what's the most surprising thing you've ever discovered in your own backyard? Dead leaves have a way of looking like the end of something. Dry, brittle, scattered, easy to mistake for waste. But they're not the remains of life. They're the continuation of it. Under that thin, crinkled layer is a system quietly at work. Insects sheltering, fungi threading through soil, microbes breaking matter down into nutrients the ground can reuse. What looks like decay is, in fact, construction. Your yard, left alone for a moment, becomes less of a surface and more of a living process. Here's the part most people never hear. Up to 40% of native pollinators spend the winter beneath leaf litter. Not in hives, not in trees, right there, inches below where a rake would pass without a second thought. Moths, solitary bees, beetles, many of them enter a kind of suspended state, waiting for temperature and light to signal that it's safe to emerge. Until then, those leaves are not clutter, they're shelter. Now imagine what happens when that layer disappears. When leaves are burned or cleared too early, entire generations are removed before they ever get the chance to wake up. Not gradually, not over time, but all at once. The life cycle simply stops. What might have become pollinators in spring never reaches that stage. And because it happens out of sight, it rarely feels like a loss. Researchers have noticed something else. In yards where leaves are left in place, insect diversity can be up to 10 times higher than in yards kept perfectly clean. Not slightly higher, an entirely different level of biological activity. More species, more interactions, more resilience built into the system without any deliberate effort. But what happens next is what nobody ever tells you. There's another layer to this that's even easier to miss. Those fallen leaves aren't just protecting life, they're feeding what comes next. As they slowly break down, they act like a quiet reserve of nutrients, releasing carbon, nitrogen, and essential minerals back into the soil over weeks and months. Not all at once, not in a rush, but gradually in a way the ecosystem can actually use. It's less like waste and more like a savings account your yard has been building all season. If you think about it in everyday terms, it's a bit like pulling all your money out of your bank account right before winter bills arrive. Everything might look clean and settled for a moment. But when it's time to pay what's due, there's nothing left to draw from. The system doesn't collapse immediately. It just quietly weakens. And it's been there the whole time. What makes this even more surprising is how much these leaves actually contribute. Studies suggest that decomposing leaf litter can supply up to 10% of the nutrients your lawn needs for the following year. That's not a small bonus. It's a meaningful portion of the system sustaining itself without fertilizers, without intervention. Just time, biology, and a process that doesn't ask for attention. But here's where it starts to shift from interesting to consequential, because once that natural cycle is interrupted, something else has to take its place. And what replaces it isn't always obvious at first glance. But here's the part that changes everything. Right now, as you read this, it's already happening in your backyard. Beneath that thin layer of leaves, life is holding steady, waiting, feeding, preparing. It doesn't announce itself. There's no visible signal, no obvious movement. But the system is active, even in stillness, carrying forward processes that don't pause just because we're not looking. Researchers at the University of Maryland found something that reframes this entirely. Yards where leaves are left in place can support up to 3 times more birds in the spring. Not because the leaves attract birds directly, but because they sustain the insects those birds rely on. It's a chain reaction, quiet but precise. Remove the base, and everything above it begins to thin out, which means the birds you notice months later, the ones returning, singing, moving through the trees, are connected to a decision that felt insignificant at the time. Many of them depend on the insects that made it through winter hidden beneath those leaves. No leaves, fewer insects. Fewer insects, fewer reasons for birds to stay. And the scale of that hidden life is easy to underestimate. A single leaf can host up to 50 active microscopic organisms, bacteria, fungi, tiny invertebrates, all interacting, all contributing to decomposition and nutrient cycling. Multiply that by the thousands of leaves across a yard, and what you have isn't a mess. It's a dense, living network. And what you're about to hear is the reason this matters more than you ever imagined. There's a deeper layer to this, one that doesn't just affect what grows, but how long it survives. Fallen leaves act like a natural cover, shading the soil and slowing down moisture loss. Instead of water evaporating quickly under direct sun or wind, it's held in place, available for roots over time. In practical terms, this can reduce the need for watering by as much as 30%. What looks like a loose, messy surface is actually a protective barrier, quietly regulating temperature and hydration. Data from the USDA reinforces this in a more precise way. Soils covered with organic layers like leaf litter can lose up to 50% less water through evaporation compared to exposed soil. That difference builds over days and weeks, especially in warmer seasons. The ground stays cooler, more stable, less prone to the kind of dryness that forces constant intervention. Your lawn is drinking less because of what you're about to burn. And there's another function, less visible but just as important. Beneath those leaves, fungal networks are actively breaking down not only organic matter, but also certain pollutants in the soil. These fungi can help filter contaminants, improving the quality of water as it moves downward toward groundwater systems. It's a slow process, but a meaningful one, part of a natural filtration system that operates without machinery or oversight. But the real reason to stop burning leaves isn't about your lawn at all. At some point, this stops being just a matter of yard care and starts to feel like a quiet decision about how you relate to the living world around you. It's easy to frame it as maintenance, clean versus messy, controlled versus neglected. But beneath that framing, something more subtle is happening. You're choosing whether a process continues uninterrupted or whether it ends early, simply because it's inconvenient to see. Because you're not just managing leaves, you're deciding what gets to finish its cycle. And that shift is small, almost invisible. No announcement, no immediate reward, just the absence of interruption. The choice to let something unfold at its own pace, even if it doesn't look polished in the meantime. In a way, it asks for a kind of patience that modern life doesn't often encourage. You're not just leaving leaves, you're giving life a chance to wake up again. It reframes the yard entirely, not as a project to perfect, but as a system you're in quiet partnership with. Something that doesn't need constant correction, just a bit of space to do what it has always done. The leaves fall, they settle, they break down, and in doing so, they prepare the ground for what comes next. There's a rhythm there, one that doesn't rush or optimize, but still arrives exactly where it needs to. And maybe that's the part that lingers. The realization that not everything needs intervention to be valuable. Some things work better when they're simply allowed to continue. The leaves don't burn. They remember. What looks like a simple layer of dry leaves turns out to be something much more connected. They shelter pollinators through the most fragile part of their life cycle. They feed the soil slowly, returning nutrients that sustain what grows next. They support entire food chains, drawing birds back in the spring. They help the ground hold on to water, reducing the need for constant care. And beneath it all, they even contribute to cleaning the soil itself, filtering what moves quietly below the surface. It's not one function. It's a system, already working. Your yard doesn't turn off when you do. It transforms. If this made you see that space a little differently, leave a like, not out of habit, but as a small signal that this way of looking at things matters. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring what's actually alive in your backyard and why it's more important than it seems. And take a second to consider this. Do you know what's living under your lawn at this exact moment? If you want to go deeper, everything I know about this is in the description.